If you use Adobe products like Lightroom, Lightroom Classic, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, InDesign, you probably recently agreed to an updated terms of use that you might not even have noticed. This is their end user license agreement, the EULA, and it gives them the right to look at your pictures, your video, listen to your audio. It's pretty scary, but I wasn't even going to cover it. Like, I'm an old software guy. I was a developer, a systems administrator. I know these EULAs are just written by lawyers, and in the back end stuff doesn't seem to happen. But then I heard Adobe's clarification of their terms of use. After everybody got mad, Adobe was like, whoa, settle down. This will calm you down. That clarification is what freaked me out. Here, I want to read some of it to you. We recently made an update to our terms of use with the goal of providing more clarity. Here's a view of what happened. We may access, view, or listen to your content through both automated and manual methods, but only in limited ways. Okay, what does that mean, only in limited ways? Because, spoiler alert, they do not go on to define what those limited ways are. So not unlimited, but it could be anything? But wait, here's some more comforting words. And only as permitted by law. You don't have to say that because you can't do illegal stuff. Of course, it's permitted by law, but they're all about being transparent here. So they say, for example, we might look at your content to respond to feedback or support requests, detect, prevent, or otherwise address fraud, security, legal, or technical issues. Here's why that's scary. They say they only use it in limited ways, but then they say, for example, we might use it in these two ways, but that does not limit how they might use it because there are an unlimited number of ways that they did not list. By saying, for example, they're not saying, we will use it in only these two ways. But wait, there's more. They say, we do not review all content uploaded, but we may use technologies, vendors, processes, or manual human review to screen for certain types of illegal content. For example, child sexual abuse material or other abusive content or behavior. This is concerning because it's virtue signaling. Like, they did not say we are only looking for this thing. They just cited that as an example. There could be many other types of examples. Adobe makes useful tools for photographers. Full disclosure, I've written a bunch of books about their products. Like, here's my Photoshop book, here's my Lightroom book. I have a new Lightroom Classic 2024 book that I'm writing right now. Adobe makes tools, but if you got a Makita hammer, and what if the terms of agreement for the hammer said that Makita, a human representative from Makita, might be looking through your windows to see if you were misusing that hammer. Maybe you're hitting your kids. We don't know. We're just going to be looking through your windows. That's just one example of what we might be looking for. Maybe we're looking for other things. I don't know. No, that is wildly unacceptable. I need privacy when I use my Adobe products. Hear me out. I am under NDA, non-disclosure agreement, for several unreleased products. I am going to be creating reviews with them, perhaps using Adobe editing software. I'm definitely going to be making thumbnails for them using Adobe Photoshop. I can't have somebody looking at these undisclosed products. That would be breaking my NDA with the manufacturer. There are lots of people who use Photoshop for secret stuff, and we can't have human beings looking at that. How about boudoir photographers? Their privacy of their clients is extremely important to them. If you're going to be using Adobe products to edit your boudoir photography, they are saying they could have a human looking at that, and they're hiding behind this like self-righteous thing where like, hey, maybe it's a kid. We need to look at it and see if it's a kid. Like, you're going to be scrutinizing people's boudoir photos trying to figure out the age of the person in the photo? How's that going to work? What if somebody takes a picture of their kid in the bath? Are you going to be having a human being like scrutinizing that picture to see if it shows a little too much? How are you supposed to police this? Speaking of police, Adobe, you are not the police. We have the entire judicial branch that is supposed to be handling these things. You do not need to erase all of your users' privacy because you say suddenly you're in charge of policing stuff. You're not. Here's the most infuriating thing. They bury this in terms of use, a EULA that most human beings could not read because it's long and boring. But then they say, You may learn more about our content moderation policies in our Transparency Center. Oh, great. I would love some transparency here because I have lots of questions. Like, who was looking at my stuff? Under what circumstances? Is it anonymous or can they see what user account it is tied to? Can they look up my specific user account and look at my stuff? If I open a picture and edit it locally, do you see that? Or if I remove a spot of dust with generative fill, do you see the whole picture? Let's open up their Transparency Center. Oh, guess what? It says nothing about any of that. There is no transparency. Does Adobe tell you if they manually review one of your images? No, there is no transparency. Their Transparency Center has almost no information. If you thought I was mad before, the last section really pisses me off. Adobe's continued commitments. Adobe does not train Firefly generative AI models on customer content. Firefly generative AI models are trained on a dataset of licensed content such as Adobe Stock. Here's why I'm mad about that, because I am an Adobe Stock contributor. Chelsea and I spent many years of our professional photography career creating and selling stock photography, including to an agency that Adobe Stock went on to buy. And during that time, I'm sure as a stock contributor, I'd signed some EULAs, but I never knowingly agreed to let AI train on my images, and I wouldn't have. But I'm sure something about the EULA that I definitely did not read gave them access to do that. And I would have signed it anyway, because that was how I made my living. Photoshop is how I make my living as a photographer. We do not have a choice but to agree to these things. But I was not aware that you were going to be using it to train AI. That AI has gone to put stock photographers basically completely out of work. And if you can slip something so huge like that in your terms of use, what makes me think that this terms of use won't also be wildly abused? Adobe, you need to do better. In the comments, tell me what you think, because you know what? Adobe is going to watch this and they have to read your comments. So write a comment and tell them what you think. One more thing. Remember Edward Snowden? Edward Snowden was a contractor for the NSA, partially responsible for things like global surveillance. You know, this is the US government keeping the world safe by sort of listening in. And he revealed that the employees that were part of that program could abuse that sort of thing. This happens over and over again. I know this because I'm a former systems administrator. Like, I worked on hosted websites and we did have the responsibility to make sure that they weren't doing illegal stuff. Now, we did not go proactively looking for that stuff because that would be an invasion of privacy, but frequently the government would come to us and say, hey, you're hosting some illegal content, and we would scrape together the evidence and shut it down. That's the way things should work. But when you're a systems administrator, you sometimes have access to people's emails. You have access to their files, and you bet your ass people abuse that. I was very respectful of privacy, but I had a lot of peers who were not so respectful. And this has been proven time and time again. There are so many cases where a police officer sees a pretty girl in traffic, looks up her license plate number, finds her phone number, finds her address, and gives her a call. Police officers might use surveillance equipment to stalk their girlfriend, see if they're cheating. That kind of thing. If you give humans access to confidential information, they abuse it. And Adobe, that's why we can't have blanket manual intervention available for our files, because I do not trust people. I don't trust corporations. I demand the privacy. Some of you are going to say, just don't use Adobe products. That's ridiculous because many of us do not have a choice. Adobe essentially has a monopoly on so many creatives' work because we have built up infrastructures. All of our peers use Adobe products. They use Photoshop, they use InDesign. We're exchanging it back and forth, and that's the only software they know how to work with. They have built entire careers around this software. We cannot simply pivot and switch to some other application which doesn't fulfill the same niche because there's not that much competition. We can't just switch because the terms of agreement are dropped on us and we don't agree with it. That's why I'm making this, because I need Adobe to walk this back, remove the manual intervention.